Welcome to Sacred Space with Sonia. I'm your host, Sonia Sanger, and today's topic is for all the mamas out there. I want you to know that I see you, I feel you, and I have been through it all with you. The topic is matrescence, and if it's a topic you haven't heard before, it's because it was only coined in the 1970s by an anthropologist. And basically, what it encompasses is the entire transformation, the physical, psychological, emotional, and social changes that you go through when you become a mother. Some have likened it to a developmental earthquake, so to speak. There is so much changing in the body, including brain changes. So, our guest today is Cayley Benjamin. She's a motherhood coach and also a matrescence educator. This is going to be a deep dive into the journey of motherhood. Cayley, thank you so much for being here. I also want to note that we're recording this episode just a couple days after Mother's Day. So first off, happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you, Sonia. Same to you.
Tell us a little bit about your work because you are a matrescence educator, but you're also a motherhood coach.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into this line of work?
19 years ago, I started as a coach and a facilitator. I laugh thinking about it now because I was 21 years old. I just finished university studying psychology and sociology, and I got a great opportunity to work in a business as a workshop facilitator and learn about coaching. And why I laugh now is because I was so young and so naive in the grand scheme of things, and some people took a chance on me. And throughout those 19 years, well, 15 years I spent in the corporate world, I led workshops, retreats, orientation programs, management retreats, worked with all types of leaders from different sectors here and in Asia Pacific. And of course, I encountered a lot of mothers in business. And I really was privy to a lot of intimate conversations with mothers. And I noticed mothers would talk to me about details of their transitions, their careers, their experience that we weren't talking about more broadly,
Mm.
not only in workplaces, but just more broadly. I got this really beautiful preview into the role of mother, but it left me with a lot of questions too. Mainly the question being, why don't we talk about this more? And so I became pregnant with my son about 7 years ago. And as I was going through the transformation myself, I was like, what is this within me that's shifting and transforming? Like I have been supporting people and learning about and going through so much education over the last 15 years around transitions and transformations professionally. What is going on within me? And through the depths of Google, I discovered matrescence. I normally say don't Google
Yeah.
anything related to motherhood, but that is the pure gold that I got from Google in the year 2020 or 2019. And it set me on a different path in my own career.
What was it about learning about that term matrescence that unlocked something or opened something up in you? What was that curiosity?
There was a word for the complexity that I was feeling because in my own pregnancy, I was grappling with body image and body changes and grief around my relationship change that was already shifting and would be shifting. I was questioning everything. I was questioning birth choices. I was questioning our medical system. I was questioning why we do things the way we do, why people give me certain advice over others. I was given so many well-built spreadsheets related to all of the equipment that I needed for for the nursery, for like it blew me away.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really curious about there was this moment when my husband and I went to our prenatal education class and we both left the first workshop. It was a 6-part series. And we turned to each other in the car and we said, no one asked about us and how we're doing.
Mm. That is so profound. And I remember feeling the same way
Mm-hmm.
going through my motherhood journey. And, mine started off really, I guess, difficult because my first pregnancy ended in miscarriage.
Mm.
And for me, it really brought into focus what was important to me and what wasn't. And I'm one of those people, I always knew I wanted to be a mom. So having a miscarriage was my biggest fear.
Mm.
And I was so afraid that my dream wouldn't come true. And there were some really, really dark months. And then, I did a lot of work, a lot of healing work. I went to Reiki, did a lot of different things. And then the experience after getting pregnant with my son was completely different. And I made the decision to let myself think of the best case scenario
Mm,
instead of the worst case scenario because I would, if I started to go down that other path, I would have spiraled. And I wanted to be in a really good frame of mind
mm,
bringing a child into the world. And so, in many ways, I feel like I needed to be spiritually ready for my children.
mm,
And I feel like the lesson in the miscarriage for me, if there was one, was for me to be grateful for what I already had and for me to understand the depth of the abundance in my life and that my kids needed me to be grounded and to understand that
mm,
for them to be ready to
mhm,
come into this world.
mhm.
Um, those are, I guess, just thoughts I've kind of come to myself. But the the adaptation of becoming a mother is a long journey, and that is what matrescence encompasses. It's a physical, emotional, psychological, societal transformation
Mhm.
that you go through. How would you describe it if someone says to you, I've never heard of matrescence before?
That is the transformation that a person goes through as they become a mother. So as they go into motherhood and as you continue through motherhood, and both are really important to
Mm,
think about the journey into for you. That's what you just spoke about in your own experience and having a miscarriage. And then for you, the spiritual domain shifted, was
completely.
activated. There were shifts and changes and reflection around that. And a lot became clear for you in the psychology of it for you too. Like the psychological domain shifted for you too in your matrescence and thinking about this is the mindset I want to have to bring children into the world
Mm,
and the mindset of abundance and gratitude. So I would describe it as both the shift into and then through motherhood, and that it shifts us physically, psychologically, socially, economically, spiritually, and beyond. And those that definition and those words come from Dr. Orly Athan, who has resurrected the term and been the one who's really led the charge for the we are having this
mhm.
conversation today.
Yeah, I did a deep dive into a little bit of matrescence research. And so what I learned that the term was first coined in the
That's
1970s
right.
by anthropologist Dana Raphael,
Right.
who was really looking into all of these shifts that
Mhm.
mothers were going through. Why do you think it's taken this long? It's 2026 now. 1970, this term first was brought forward. Why don't you think we've had this term earlier?
Mhm. Yeah, Dana Raphael started it, you're right, coined the term in the 1970s, and her work really followed and continued to then follow breastfeeding, and she coined 2 terms. So she coined matrescence, and she coined doula,
Wow.
and doula stayed,
Hmm.
and we all know it,
Yes.
but matrescence got filed away and lost, and I think there are many different reasons as to why matrescence was filed away, was dormant for so long, and we can think about firstly, funding for women's health and maternal health. It's severely underfunded. It's been invisibilized and stigmatized and told that it's to happen behind closed doors. Motherhood has often been just a given. It's like, oh, people have done this since the dawn of time.
Hmm.
So why would we need to research it? Why would we need to even talk about it? It's just been so pervasive. Everyone comes from a mother.
Yeah. Like it's an innate a transformation. Why would you need to talk about it?
That's
But
right.
the thing is everyone's journey is so different and everyone goes through different phases as well. And I think the other thing that needs to be said is that this is a healthy but demanding challenge
Mm,
that everyone goes through and it's not the same as postpartum depression.
that's right.
And I think sometimes people think, oh, some people go through matrescence and others don't. It's like, no,
That's right.
everybody does. It's like adolescence.
That's right. That's right. Matrescence like adolescence is the most profound slogan that exists around it to help us understand what matrescence is. Because I remember when I first heard it, the penny dropped, and I was like, "This is it. This is the term that really helps me to understand what I'm moving through," but also frames as I come back to my original story around all those mothers I had worked with in the corporate world and the stories they were telling me, what was shifting in their life. Like this is a concept and a term that encompasses that,
Mhm.
like adolescence. Because we can think about our teen years. Like, think back to your teen years right now and what that conjures up in mind of what that time. Yeah,
Rebellion.
exactly. Rebellion. You're hormonal,
Mm,
emotional, socially awkward in a way, right? Renegotiating again relationships, peers, friends, parents, who am I? Sexuality, like body changes. And interesting fun fact is that adolescence wasn't a term until the 1920s.
wow.
So we're only just over about 100 years into the term adolescence. And before that, there was literally no conversation around adolescence.
Mm. So we're playing catch up on a
Yes.
lot of different fronts,
Yes.
especially on the motherhood front and really understanding what all the women and all the mothers have gone through before us.
Mm,
Um, and we talked about like the physical changes
mm,
is one I want to learn more about because
mhm.
you actually go through your brain develops and you go through developmental changes.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yes. Yeah, it's so incredible what is happening in the brain, and there's a whole body of work by different neuroscientists, but there's one neuroscientist who's really been leading the way, Dr. Jodi Poliski, and she has a book and a podcast called The Mommy Brain. And it's really about rebranding what mom brain is,
Mm,
where we often think about, oh, mothers apologize like, "Oh, sorry, I'm so foggy," right? As if it's this, it's all about cognitive, you know, sort of dissonance or fogginess, but it's actually so much more about what's going on in the brain, which is yes, there's a reduction in the gray matter. So if you look at the brain, it's reducing. They call it's pruning and it's tuning. And I'm by no means a gardener, but what I do know is that pruning and tuning, when we think of yes, there's a reduction in the gray matter in the brain, but then what happens is the growth in the areas that are responsible for emotional attunement,
mhm.
for social like well-being and attunement, and for being wired to caring for our children and their needs is what grows. And interestingly, there's just a new study that's come out in the last 2 weeks that's looked at and investigated the brain of the second time mother and
Oh,
what changes in the brain in a second child. And that is like literally just hot off the press and looking at like how the brain is then actually being wired for multitasking and like managing multiple priorities and like the executive function needed around that.
and so what else was found? Like how is having a second child different from having a
Well, I
first?
think what is interesting is that it's exactly that soundbite. The second child is different from having a first. So the brain is so smart that it literally knows that it's a subsequent child and
Mm,
that the mother needs different wiring to be able to now be a mother of two.
mhm. And then with every child you have, whether you have, 1, 2, 3, 4, your matrescence journey
Mhm.
shifts and changes. Like, it never really ends, I think, once you become a
Mhm.
mother. Is that correct?
I think you could say that. And I say that with a lot of hope and a lot of positivity around that, that it doesn't end. That you could say that in the beginning, when you first become a mother or you're journeying to motherhood for the first time, it's more acute. It's it might you're wrestling with more. There's so much more newness, right?
Mhm.
And so it can feel like all is shifting at once and we're grappling with all this disorientation that's happening. And then it's not as if it stabilizes, but it steadies a bit.
Yeah.
But then I like to think of it as there are points in time when it becomes disorienting again, where that wheel might start spinning a bit more quickly.
Mm,
And that might be when you put your child into child and
mm,
suddenly you're reevaluating, like, who am I? Was this the right choice? How do I feel about this? You're reconciling your own development as something changes in your motherhood. Or perhaps it's when you return to paid work, if that's the avenue that you choose. And now you're reconciling your identity again. And yeah, once again, who am I? What do I believe in? What are my priorities? What are my values? Literally looking at your time and how you manage the load of motherhood. Or it might be when your children go off to school. Suddenly it becomes, again, needing that more acute phase again.
mm.
I love that Dr. Orly Athan, who's the one who resurrected the term that had been lost from the 70s. So Dr. Athan is a clinical psychologist and a researcher at a Columbia University. And she just put forward in the last year and a half that perhaps we should look at it in stages of motherhood. That there would be early motherhood. And then once the kids go to school, there's middle motherhood.
Mm.
And then empty nester and beyond, there's late motherhood, which includes grandmothering.
That's beautiful. And I that really aligns for me because I think of like early motherhood where those foggy years where like you said you're going through those actual developmental brain changes and it's like that, it gives you those superhuman powers where in the middle of the night, you can hear your baby crying
Yes.
right away and you jump out of bed. And it's like, it just happened to me actually recently. I heard a sound in the middle of the night. I thought one of my kids fell out of their bed. I mean, they're 6 and 4 now, but within a split second, I was
Yeah.
out of my bed, standing outside my door and ready to investigate.
Yeah.
And then I woke up and I'm like, what am I doing here? And I thought, I still got it.
I know. I mean, funny enough, I was just having that conversation with my husband this morning because my daughter is almost 2, my son is 6, and my daughter has been waking a lot recently, and my husband was sleeping in her room next to her last night, and he literally last night he woke up this morning. He's like, "Wow, she didn't even wake up at all last night." I'm like, "You didn't hear that? Like I'm in the other room. You're sleeping right next to her, and you didn't hear a thing, and I could hear it in the other room." I said to him, "I'm wired differently than you." And that's why I can hear it. So rather than it being filled with resentment or anger, like, "Why didn't you hear that?" I'm like, "I'm just wired differently, and that's why."
When I got pregnant,
Mm,
I kept having this visualization of a clock. Like, imagine like an old clock that's never been used, but suddenly someone winds it up and it knows exactly what to do.
mm,
I felt that way about my body after
mm,
I became pregnant. Like how much respect and deep appreciation I had for my body that just knew how to do all these things.
mm,
And we focus so much on the physical when we're pregnant, all the physical changes, but there is this mind body soul connection that
mm.
all changes. It's all like full encompassing. Do you did you ever think of a clock? I know that sounds crazy, but like this idea that we don't give our bodies the respect I think that they need
Mm,
and how much they do for us without asking for much in return.
mm. Oh, truly. I think of there's this beautiful film that's by Dr. Wayne Dyer, and in it, he talks about us living our purposes in life and unfolding in life. And something I heard this before I was a mother, and it's always stayed with me. He said something along the lines of, "For 40 weeks, an embryo becomes a fetus and grows exactly as it needs to and knows what to do all on its own. And then it's birthed into the world and we think we need to control it." And I thought of that a lot in my pregnancy, not necessarily for the baby, but for me, like allowing and trusting what was happening within me.
Mm.
And then once my boy was birthed, how do I still allow and trust myself to unfold in the natural way, receiving the lessons, the insights, the learnings through my own matrescence, rather than feeling like I need to control it all.
Mm.
There's a letting go. There's an acceptance in that too. And that for me has been a big part of my own matrescence. I'd say in the spiritual domain of matrescence, like the allowance, the letting it be
The surrender.
completely.
Yeah, I remember feeling the same way and knowing that the answers would come
Hmm.
when they needed to, or when the issue or problem, not necessarily problem, but the challenge
Hmm.
would present itself. And also giving a lot of trust to my children because I view them as my teachers.
Hmm.
And so sometimes I let them guide me.
Hmm.
And knowing that it's a two-way reciprocal
Yes.
relationship and then it's not one that necessarily needs to dominate the other.
And it's a beautiful lens to think of it that way because through our children, we are growing. And that's what matrescence is. It's like through our motherhood journeys, we are growing as humans. It's a significant phase of human development, of adult development. And it's like the textbooks historically forgot or just have completely missed any development that happens after adolescence.
Mm.
And that's what matrescence brings in to our language, into our learning, into science and research to look at what is it that happens when somebody becomes a mother.
Mhm.
And that question really has inspired me and inspired it in Dr. Athan's work. Her questions are like, what does it mean to become a mother? What is normal? What's the range of the experience?
Mhm. And then there's kind of like this, almost getting comfortable or setting in the feelings or expectations around each category. So whether it's like societally,
Mm,
like how people view me, how I view myself differently after you become a mother.
mhm,
Um, and grappling with that and kind of
mhm.
finding your own balance within that. Is that how you see it as well?
Absolutely. That there are different domains that matrescence shifts and changes. And the domains are, let's call them universal. So everyone experiences shifts and changes through those domains, but the shifts and changes we experience are unique to each of us. So just like adolescence, again, why it's such a beautiful analogy is that while everyone is moving through their matrescence, it's different for all of us. My experience is different to yours, but we're both experiencing matrescence. Just like adolescence, we were both teens, we both experienced adolescence, and the experience was different for both of us. And so the domains that matrescence touches, again, I'll credit Dr. Athan on this and her work and her research in her lab out of Columbia, looking at what is it that shifts and changes for mothers. Test myself here to see if I remember all of them, but biological, so physical and hormonal changes, neurological, brain, psychological, social, economic, political,
Mm,
moral, ecological, spiritual, and existential.
that's all your fingers.
Oh, I got them all. I think so. I hope that's it. Close to
It
it.
might go to the toes too, but yeah,
And you can
it's
think across those 10 areas that when I share that with mothers or that when with the mothers who I work with or in education sessions, people are like, yep, check, 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 check.
yeah.
Like they can think of such real concrete examples of the shifts and changes they have felt across those 10 areas. And it would be different for everyone to answer in the room if we were in a room of 50 people
Mhm.
what those shifts and changes have been, but people could name them across the domains.
For mothers who have adopted or who have gone through a different journey to get
Mhm,
to motherhood, are they still experiencing all of these same changes
mhm,
as you would if you had biologically had a child?
mhm. I think where it can differ would be on adoption, and so some of the hormonal cascades wouldn't be the same. But if we think about reproductive technologies, IVF being one of them, or we think about surrogacy, that there are still so many domains are shifting and changing, where it becomes quite I think it's a very invisible conversation that isn't happening would be around those who are wanting to adopt or to have a surrogate or going through reproductive technologies and they don't yet have a baby
Mm,
and they are going through matrescence but without a baby.
that's heavy.
Hmm.
I feel that. I remember feeling that way
Yeah.
and having so many friends that have gone through the IVF journey and watching them go through it, and, it is a roller coaster.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, I wanna send love to everyone that might be
Yeah,
going through that right now.
absolutely. And I know it well. I went through IVF to have my second child.
Mm.
So I experienced secondary infertility and went through fully understanding like what could come my way in terms of the emotions, but still it was a wild ride.
It absolutely is, and
Mm.
I wanna give a moment to talk about the dads and the
Mhm,
fatherhood journey because
mhm,
that's also, a developmental phase that
mhm.
fathers go through, but how is that different, that transformation different for
Mm.
fathers than it is for mothers?
You're probably gonna wanna cut this part out.
No, I want you to share your full opinion with me.
Um, well, people often say, "Is there putrescence?" And I'm like, "Well, maybe."
Mm,
I don't know, I actually haven't looked it up. What I know for me is that my work centers the mother,
mm,
and that's not to minimize the father, but my work centers the mother because I believe that mothers have been invisibilized and made and been an afterthought for so long. And so, yes, there's still so much work as well to be done on fatherhood and what those changes look like as well. But what we know about feminism, what we know about women's and maternal health is that it's so far behind.
mhm,
And my work centers the mother.
mm,
But what I do know, and I haven't read it, I just saw it this week, and I wish I could think of who the author was. I saw there's a book that has just come out called The Dad Brain.
mm.
And so there's a whole area around that too of like what it looks like for mental health challenges for fathers as well. But what I would say is I'm not well versed in that. What I do know in the work that I do with mothers in my own interest areas is around the social conditioning, societal roles and expectations are generally very different. They're gendered. And so mothers who are born into this generation, the expectations that are placed on mothers are so different than what it is for fathers and have historically been. And it's shifting and changing. And there's a whole area of study called motherhood studies in sociology. And I've done work with Dr. Sophie Brock, who's out of Australia, who is a leader in this field. And that looks at generationally what are the roles and expectations placed on mothers?
Mm.
And how are we socially conditioned into the role from the time virtually we were born?
How would you say that load, that motherhood load is now compared to maybe say for our mothers?
Hmm.
Do you see us carrying more
Hmm.
now?
It's a tough question to answer. I think in some ways, so let me name it. There's an actual name for the era of motherhood that we're in right now, and it's called intensive mothering.
That checks.
And that's what sociologists have named it, intensive mothering. That our era is a time where mothers are expected to be forever present with their kids, to be fully invested in their kids, to spend money on their kids, to put their martyrdom, to like put their children first ahead of themselves, and add in also potentially expected to engage in paid work while being the perfect mother alongside that. And so, yes, we're in a different era than ever before. Intensive mothering checks.
It sure does, but I think also you know, we don't have to check those boxes. We absolutely do not. And, we get to decide the type of motherhood journey we want to
Mhm,
have.
mhm,
And, I feel so grateful for my partner and for my husband, who is my equal partner in this
mhm,
parenting journey.
mhm,
Um, that didn't come easily to me at the beginning because, I think as for myself, wanting to control everything, wanting to do everything was really important to me. Like, oh, don't do this wrong. Or if you
mhm.
give them a bath, like, are you sure you're going to,
Yes.
whatever it was. And I had a friend at the time who had had a child a few years before me. And she said to me, do you want the help, or do you only want the help your way?
Mm,
And that was a big lesson for me, and I realized my husband will do it differently,
mhm,
but I still want his help.
mhm,
So, I had to give up that control.
mhm.
Um, so that I'll just leave that where it is, but I'm not sure if that's something you hear from the mothers that you work with, it's like, I have so many things on my to-do list, but then there's also this, reluctance to give up that control.
Absolutely. There's a term for it. It's called maternal gatekeeping,
Mm.
and it's where mothers don't allow their partners to do work because they won't do it as well as themselves. And so we gatekeep, but then the load becomes bigger and bigger. It's like, "Oh, I should be able to do it, and I want it done my way," and so when we can literally, like, open the gates to allow it to be done and to go, "What's the minimum standard here?"
Mhm.
Right? Like, what is acceptable?
Yeah.
And be okay with that.
Yeah.
But I also wanna pick up on the word help.
Mm. Ah, good. Yes. Yes. Call me out on that, please.
Because right? Because and I don't think you meant it in this way, but I do wanna comment on
Mm.
it because people say this and who I work with as well. They're like, "I just want, like, my partner help." Or we go out and dads historically been praised, "Oh, you're helping." And it's not about help, it's about equity in partnership. And so it's like, I say, "I don't want your help, I want your partnership."
Yeah. Thank you for that
Mm.
correction. I didn't even realize I said it.
Yeah, it's so deeply ingrained
Or
in
you
us.
you often hear someone say, "Oh, my husband's babysitting."
Yes.
That's their child.
Yes, actually, it's their child.
That's
She
just
just
parenting.
totally it's just parenting on a Saturday.
But yeah, like this and I think of all the single mothers who are doing this alone. And the load that they're carrying right now in this time, the economic, the social, everything. How do you support mothers, especially if they are single, if they're doing it on their
Mm,
own?
mm. First, I wanna say something about single mothers that really shifted for me. I had a single mother say to me that she finds it very activating when people say, "Oh, I'm solo parenting this weekend."
Mm.
And she shifted the language for me in that I never say that anymore because I don't actually have deep lived experience around what it would actually mean to solo parent all the time. When I've been able to work with people who are truly single parents, as you just said, the enormity of the load that they carry alone, It's extraordinary, like, truly extraordinary.
It really is. I recently did an interview, with an organization called Cause We Care,
Mm.
ahead of Mother's Day, and they specifically support,
Mm.
single moms, and, I had a couple conversations with single moms, and I just wanted to open up my heart and give them so
Mm.
much love and
Mm.
gratitude because that is an invisible,
Mhm.
enormous load,
Mm.
and I have so much respect for all the single moms out there, so I just wanna say that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that in the work that I've done with single moms, a lot of them are maybe part of their matrescence is like the motivation to then want to set boundaries, to let go of the things that like let go of expectations that aren't aligned with how they want to mother.
Mm,
They have high motivation to want to create the village and have other people to support them because they don't have it in a partner. But there's also likely a grief for them that they have because there's no like, oh, I'll just go tap out for 20 minutes and my partner will step in, right? Or I'm going to go out on Saturday. Like it takes so much, like the logistics of
mm.
stepping away from your kids are, again, is extraordinary.
We've gone over some of the physical and, psychological changes that happen in the brain, but when it comes to the societal changes,
Mm.
that can be one of the most difficult ones because there's a big identity shift
Mhm.
that you go through as a mother, and I've wondered if it's because, you go through this time where there are 2 bodies in one,
Mhm.
and so you actually see the world differently
Mm.
as a mother.
Mm. Tell me more.
Well, I just think that when I went back to work, say there was a colleague that maybe I had an issue with,
Mhm.
I looked at them through a completely different lens now
Mm.
because I'm like, they're a child. They're a
Mhm.
child of this universe, of this planet, and they deserve love and empathy
Mm.
just like anybody else. So it made me a softer person,
Mm.
less harsh than I was before.
Mhm.
But I mean, that can be different for everyone.
Yes.
Um, how did it change you?
Mm. On the identity side?
I mean, I guess that's
Mm.
probably difficult to answer because you have been doing the work in this
Mm.
space
Mm.
for so long. So maybe did you feel that you were better prepared
Mm.
for matrescence because you
Mm.
already had the language around it?
Mm. Yeah, great question. I think that I think that in short, I don't wanna say I was prepared for motherhood, but I do think likely because the conversations I had been a part of, my entry into motherhood or the things I had a bit more of a preview perhaps into some of the topics and challenges and opportunities that people were grappling with.
Mm,
I'd had a lot of time beforehand because of my profession to think about my priorities, how I wanted to live once I became a mother, what mattered to me, or what I thought would matter to me as well.
mhm,
and and so then as I entered into motherhood, I think that's one of the important parts though of we don't necessarily have enough community in our lives in the current day where we get to hear from people who are ahead of the journey. People who are perhaps later into motherhood who talk openly and honestly about what that's like, or who are openly talking about what they're grappling with, what they're contemplating, what they're reflecting on. And I did have that in some shape and form. And so, yes, it helped shape my matrescence going into it, thinking what matters to me and how I want to be a mom. But on the topic of identity, I want to comment, I think, broadly on what I see in some of the moms that I work with that we're in a bit of a different era in terms of the role of mother and really even the point in time that people become a mother. I was at a dinner a few years ago, and one of the doctors, one of the surgeons from BC Women's was there, and we were talking, and he said the average age at BC Women's of someone giving birth is 37. And that was at that time, that was 2 years ago. There's a lot of reasons and factors of why that is. But even if we consider likely, I don't know the stats on what the average age of someone becoming a mother would have been 20, 30 years, 40 years ago,
mhm.
likely different,
Yeah.
younger. And so I think for many, as we continue in our adult life, our identities naturally are getting more crystallized. And so by the time we become a mother, perhaps we have an identity, a professional identity that's more crystallized.
Mm.
perhaps we've done more self-development, we're like, "And I know who I am." And then motherhood comes along and rocks that.
Oh, it sure does.
And so there might be I wonder if there's more like a rocking of the boat because of for some people as as I'd say we're in an era of wellness and personal development and people focus on themselves and then motherhood comes along and shifts that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I can speak to my own experience a little bit because of my role as a news anchor, as a journalist. It's so visible,
Mhm.
So when I went away on mat leave, having someone physically replace me in
Mm.
my role was a tough thing to grapple with. It was the pandemic. I was at home with my son, pushing a stroller, feeling very, very invisible, and realizing I can be replaced in my role,
Mhm.
in my job. I can be replaced in any job.
Mm.
My real job is this one as a
Mm.
mother.
Mm.
And so the focus for me shifted because I realized that my home life, my family life was the center and everything else revolved around
Mm.
it.
Mm.
And that wasn't like it happened overnight, but
Mm-mm.
it was a slow realization that my identity is not my work.
Yes.
And that actually really it empowered me
Yes.
because I took my power back. I
Mhm.
wasn't giving it away anymore.
That's right.
It took a long time and maybe even, a lot of self-reflection to get to that point, but I feel like by the time I had my daughters, because I had both my kids really close together,
Mhm.
by that time I had my daughter and I went back to work, I felt like a completely different person.
Mm.
And I remember having some of my colleagues say to me, "You're something's different about you, like, why are you so happy?" And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I was like,
Mm.
"Well, I realize that's actually, when I'm doing well,
Yes.
that's my natural state. That's where I
Yes.
like to be." And I'm really grateful for everything that I have. My work, my role, my job, it's just the icing on the cake, but it
Mhm.
doesn't define me. So
Yes.
I feel like maybe that happiness came from that power that I
Mm.
felt within, because I have felt like motherhood, birthing a child was the most empowering thing I've ever done in my life, and
Mm.
I wish I heard more women talk about that experience
Absolutely.
because it is sacred.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the clarity and the conviction that can come from becoming a mother is amazing.
Mhm,
Like, as you speak right now, I can feel it. It's palpable as you
mhm,
speak about like what you now know is important to you
mhm.
and your source of satisfaction, of fulfillment, of happiness, like is inside rather than, oh, Sonia, the news anchor is what fulfilled me. It's actually like, it's in here.
Yes.
And there's a deep knowing. And that is, I think, one of the incredible transformations for many in their matrescence is, yeah, shifting where that comes from, of it becoming internal. And there's a real opportunity. And I think that that's the beautiful part about matrescence is matrescence isn't only about the challenge and the grappling and the distress that might come in a normal way with motherhood. It's also about the opportunities that come, the opportunities for growth,
Mhm.
for shifting our lens, for getting clear on what matters to us for standing, in our power. For now, it's like I'm shameless in my boundaries. Like
Yes.
literally, I use shameless in such a great word. Like that works for me. That doesn't work for me.
Mhm.
And there's nothingness around that in a great way. I'm just like I'm clear.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Hmm.
I'm still working on boundaries. I'm trying,
Yes.
but I'm becoming more and more aware, um, of how much I can actually take on and how
Hmm.
much, is too much for me.
Hmm.
And so there's some balancing, and maybe
Yes.
I need to learn to say no a little
Hmm.
bit more. But I'm proud of how far I've
Yes.
come.
Yes.
And you used the word earlier, crystallize. I feel
Mm.
like motherhood for me crystallized
Mm.
my essence
Mm.
in a way, and it still is evolving. But I wonder for you if you have the same experience. When I look at pictures of myself before I was a mother,
Mm.
and when I look at my pictures now, say a photograph, the before me, it's like I almost don't recognize her. It's like
Mm.
she was a different person.
Mm.
Do you ever feel the same way, or do you hear that same comment from other
I hear
moms?
that all the time. Not just
Mm.
looking at photos. I love that you brought in the visual side of it, but I mean, I say something similar to my husband. We're approaching 10 years in a few weeks, 10-year our wedding anniversary,
Congratulations.
and our son's almost 7, and we were talking about those 3 years where we didn't have our son after we got married. We're like, "We can barely remember it." Right? Like, we feel like we've always had our children together in the best of ways. Like, we can't it's hard to, in some ways, remember the detail of what life was like before that, so I hear it more in that way, but as you spoke, it made me think about adolescence, because in adolescence, in theory, you move from child to adult, and then you don't go back to child. And the same is true for matrescence. And this is something that it's a complex feeling and statement when I say it, that you don't go back to who you used to be. And for some people, they hear that and there's a liberation and there's a relief. They're like, oh, I've been trying to get back to that person and I don't want to be that person anymore. Or I've let go of some of those things. There can be relief. And there's also grief. So there's parts of that life that were wonderful for many, right? And that we loved, or we had independence or closeness in our relationship that isn't there anymore, or freedom, right?
Mhm.
Total control in our time and so much more. But there's this matrescence reminds us that we don't go back to who you used to be. And so those photos, you look at yourself from before having kids, you're like, I'm a different person than I was now, or I'm different now. And I like to argue that matrescence doesn't necessarily change us, as in we become someone new, but rather we remember the essence of who we already are.
Mm. I feel like it's almost like an up-leveling
Mm.
or you
Yes,
you're I felt like an enhanced version of myself.
completely. I mean, the last chapter of my corporate career before I became a mom and started coaching on matrescence, the last chapter was really in leading personal development work and retreats. And so I now say that motherhood is the greatest personal development retreat or experience you'll ever go on. Every day, you talked about it before, every day there is a teacher in front of you who is, reflecting the good and the bad and giving you the opportunity to for me, to look at myself and who I am, what matters, how I'm showing up, what I advocate for in the world.
Mhm.
Like looking at myself for my own sake, like my own personal development, and motherhood gives us that arena.
Yeah. And, we haven't actually said this out loud, but I know that it's something everyone says. Why didn't anyone tell me I was
Mm,
going to go
mhm,
through this? Why didn't anyone tell me that I was going to change as a person
mm,
after I became a mother? And I think
mhm.
that's kind of why we're having this conversation.
Yes.
I have a cousin of mine who is about to become a mother, and I think of her and
Mhm.
the journey that she's going to go on, and for all the other mothers who are going through this motherhood journey. Um, it's beautiful, and I'm so glad that you brought up the positive side of it, because
Mhm.
there might be grief, but there's also something really, really beautiful
Yes.
in discovering and becoming who you are.
Yes. Yes. I think that we can talk about motherhood differently, and that is part of the role of shifting the conversation around matrescence. So for someone who's becoming a mother, I think, if I'm writing in a card for someone or someone's like at your baby shower and they're like, give them advice.
Mhm.
I don't take that moment lightly.
Mm.
Instead of just, oh, you're gonna be a great mom. Like, what can I say that might plant a seed
Ooh. So
for
what
what's
would
to
you
come?
say? What would you say in that card?
I would say that I would say that you are shifting just as much as the baby, and to invest in yourself in the same way that you invest in your child. And that you motherhood will touch every aspect of your life. Like, you were about to grow. You were already growing and shifting and changing in so many ways, and more is to come. And to lean on, me, or lean on your friends, your community, to be in that conversation together.
Mm. It's beautiful because matrescence really is a catalyst for your own growth
Mhm,
and your own personal development.
mhm.
Um, what about the conversations that you have with partners
Mm,
that are trying to be there to support, um, and be there for their partners in any way that they can as they're evolving
mhm,
in this journey? I think of my husband. I think of him saying to
mhm.
me, you become a lot more patient after becoming a mom, or,
Mhm.
this and that. And, he agrees, I'm not the same person.
Mm.
I don't know if that's necessarily a positive or a negative thing, but I'm
Mhm.
not the same. Do you think that partners need to be prepared or
Mm.
know that, motherhood's going to change their
Mhm.
partner?
Mhm. Definitely. I think it's such a valuable conversation for partnerships to have around what is shifting and changing for both of you. What are the changes that a mother is going to experience? What are the changes, assuming, hetero relationship, that a father is experiencing? And to talk about that and so I really advocate for matrescence education for everyone.
Mhm,
Matrescence is not just for moms,
mhm,
just like adolescence is not just for teens,
mhm.
right? It's a wider social conversation to be having. And so partners also need to know about matrescence to be supporting the mother through it.
What about when there's 2 mothers?
Mm, mhm,
Does like, have you navigated that
mm,
with your clients before?
mm,
And I mean, there must be a lot that
mhm,
comes up.
mhm. Personally, I have not navigated that with
Okay.
clients. I think that understandably people want to work with those who have lived experience,
Of course, yeah.
and that's not my area. I'd say that for me, the primary areas that I've worked with are people who are entering into motherhood, people who have complex fertility journeys because I've also had that. People considering subsequent children, people returning to work is a big entry point of what people have worked with me historically. And and then a big part of my work has been around social conditioning or like the mental load and the cognitive labor and the social role we inherit as mothers. So people want to work with me on that. But I think if there's two mothers in a relationship, both are experiencing matrescence. And it's navigating that together, like what's shifting and changing. But if I come back to the partner conversation now, I think I remember what I was going to say is that so often as mothers, we want our partner to understand what we're going through. And I think that that is a big and perhaps unrealistic expectation. I think our partners could have a better idea of what we're going through. And socially, the wider we could educate everybody on what matrescence is. But the expectation that our partner is going to deeply understand, like my partner would deeply understand what I'm moving through, it's just not part of the human experience.
Mhm,
And so it becomes, in my opinion, so important for us to have communities of support of other mothers who we can lean on and talk with, and talk about the ins and outs, the opportunities, the challenges, everything we're moving through in really honest, intimate places.
mhm,
And or mothers who are further down the track than us in their journeys to learn from them about what might be coming and plant the seeds for us of what our growth might look like. And so it's maybe what I'm trying to say is like finding your people
yeah.
is what really matters. We can't put all the pressure on our partners. And I'm really going to advocate for matrescence education for partners and the wider society.
And I think that that sometimes naturally happens because those relationships that no longer serve you, they will just almost naturally go by the wayside because you only have so much time in the day,
Yeah.
when you become a mother
Yeah.
or when you are parenting.
Yeah.
So maybe I feel like maybe it's been more of a natural, gradual process for me
Mm,
to not necessarily let certain friendships or
mhm,
relationships go, but just I'm guided more strongly towards others that feel more aligned to where I am,
mhm.
um, spiritually right now.
Yes, absolutely. It's like finding people who you feel a connection with. And part of your matrescence is in prioritizing your time
Mm,
and realizing there isn't infinite time. And so where you want to focus your time and your energy might be with certain people. I know for a lot of mothers, they feel like a lot of mothers who I've worked with grapple with friendships that shift and change after becoming a mother with those who do or do not have children or those who are on complex fertility journeys. Like there can now feel like a wall between you or a disconnect. And so people also feel then an affinity with friends who have kids of similar ages or in similar stages so that they can move and grow through their matrescence together.
mhm. When we zoom out and look at all of society, why is it important for us all to understand what matrescence is?
Mm. I was just listening to a podcast today that said this so well. Dr. Athan was on the podcast and she said, whenever we've studied any other phase of human development, so be it, let's take children, because in the topic of motherhood, children will be familiar. When it comes to children's development, we know what's normal, and there's a band of normal. and then we know when it's not normal. So let's say walking, your child learning to walk. We know there's an age range and there's, what comes before it and doctors can help you to understand, are you within the range of normal? And then when do you need to seek help? And right now, when it comes to motherhood and matrescence, we don't have it established. We don't have an established framework for what normal looks like. In fact, it's only in the last 20 years that the question's even been asked in research. And so we just start with pathology. And so the first question that mothers ask is, what's wrong with me? Because they assume anything that isn't as, motherhood is portrayed as wonderful and blissful
And
and joyful
natural.
and natural and
Yeah.
instinctual, and it will come to you, right? And then they have the experience like, that is not what I'm experiencing 24/7.
Mhm.
And so many mothers assume something is wrong with them. And we defer and we deflect to pathology, to illness. And so matrescence opens up and widens the lens that in time, my hope is that we have a framework for what is normal that is well established and embedded into our clinical, systems, into our healthcare and education systems so that we all understand what matrescence is, what is normal. And it helps then mothers to understand, okay, is this within the range of normal for me? When do I need to seek further care? Like when is this distress
Mhm.
and disorder? And when is this normal for me?
Mhm.
But right now we're like navigating this terrain in the dark,
It feels very foggy,
Yes, just feeling
right?
our way
Like,
through.
just like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm a mom, I'm not really sure what I'm doing," you know? Like, and I think it's so normal. I've never felt like I've known what I'm doing, but I've given myself trust,
Yes. Yeah.
to that I will eventually figure
Yes.
it out.
Yes. So I have a lot of hope, I guess is what I say. I have a lot of hope for what matrescence can bring. Some people say, "Oh, it minimizes the mental health conversation." I'm like, I think it actually amplifies it. And I think the two really sit hand in hand because when we have a better understanding of what is like normative development
Mhm.
versus when it's clinical, we'll all be clearer.
Yeah. I remember sharing publicly about my journey and specifically the postpartum phase. So like
Mhm.
the fourth trimester, the
Yes.
3 months after you have your child and you're just figuring everything out and going through all that sleep deprivation. And I remember talking about it. And immediately the assumption was I was talking about postpartum depression.
Yes.
I'm like, no, I'm just talking about those 3 months. I didn't have postpartum depression, but it was, goddamn, it was hard.
Yes.
Like it was the
Mm.
hardest thing I've ever gone through. And I think that's normal.
Yes.
That is normal to feel that
Mhm.
way. And I think
Mhm.
that's the part I think that you're
Mhm.
trying to that you're keying in on here is
Mhm.
that that's all part of the normal range.
Mhm.
So if you don't feel like you know what you're doing, good. You're
Yeah.
on the right track.
Yeah.
We know none of us do.
Totally. And I think that that is exactly it. Is like if we can then define what is normal in that phase specifically, right? In the journey into matrescence, if we look and say, okay, your identity disruption, like who am I? What's going on? Like
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm doing. Or yeah, what is this? How do I feed? How do I bathe? Like the skill, the education needed. I don't have it. It's not instinctual. Nothing's wrong with you. You just don't know.
Mhm.
But then if we start to get, it opens up the conversation for what isn't normative development, right? When is it that in that time and in our matrescence, when we tip into something that does need further support?
Mm,
And what I just love to land on this is that we don't have to wait until we're in crisis to seek support.
mm,
People are often, for many reasons and a lot of social conditioning and shame, they're waiting until they feel like, well, I don't know if it's bad enough yet.
yeah.
And it's never too early to talk with your GP. It's never too early to talk to a counselor. It's never too early to begin those conversations, to talk with your partner or family or a trusted friend around it. Say, this is what I'm grappling with.
I think it's a beautiful gift that you can give yourself if
Mm,
you have the ability to seek counseling or
mm-hmm,
to seek support, whether it be through a doula
mm-hmm,
or a motherhood coach like
mm-hmm,
yourself.
mm-hmm.
I sought counseling because I realized after I had my daughter that my anxiety was just through the roof.
Yes.
I'd had two babies during the pandemic. And so my normal was strange. It was everyone's
Yeah.
normal was strange at that time. And I'm so glad that I gave myself the permission
Mhm.
to seek help
Yes,
because I realized that, what I was experiencing was also experienced by a lot of other mothers at that, in that phase of life. And it gave me some tools to work with
absolutely.
before it became, like you said, a crisis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can think of matrescence as a bell curve. And so you can think of every mother experiences matrescence. And on one end of the bell curve are those who experience perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, one percentage there. And then there's, as Dr. Athan calls it, the messy middle. There's those who are grappling with you know, expected things in their transition. And then there are those who are flourishing. And there's so little research done on that area too of like, what
Hmm.
does it mean to flourish in
Mm.
motherhood? But everyone is experiencing matrescence, and anxiety and depression or OCD or psychosis can be part of someone's matrescence experience. And that's why I really see the two. They go hand in hand. They're not one or the other. As we amplify the conversation around matrescence, it also amplifies the conversation around mental health.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a partnership, right?
Hmm.
What is your hope, I guess, going
Mm,
forward with the conversation around matrescence and even the term itself? I mean, is
mhm.
it even in the dictionary?
No.
So where are we at? Like, what do we need to work on right now? Because it's a grassroots term still, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is in many ways. It has exploded in the last even 5 years. I think of when I started this work and how deep I had to go into Google to find this term.
Mm,
And then as I stepped back into work at the turn of this calendar year after having my second child, and as I got on Google Scholar and I got on Google, it's like, what's the lay of the land? There's so much out there, which is incredible. I think the work is still in awareness, but some people know it exists, but they're like, I've heard of matrescence, but I don't know what it means.
mhm,
So there's still a lot of work around awareness. And the deeper work lies in embedding it in our systems. And that's the area that I'm really shifting into right now. So the last 5 years I have spent in leading programs and coaching moms one on one and being involved in a lot of community partnerships and organizations to educate on matrescence directly to moms.
mhm.
My focus and my work is shifting to focus now on maternal care providers, so healthcare practitioners and educational systems. To like my movement, this grassroots movement is about educating those who then have the ripple effect to be able to share the term with families, with mothers, with our wider community. And so it becomes more of a public health initiative now as I see it. So creating, yeah, literally there are no programs that I've so far encountered. I might be wrong. Please prove me wrong by listening to this podcast and tell me otherwise. No major educational institutions in Canada educate on matrescence.
That hurts.
Yes.
You know what? It hurts because it's like this journey isn't, being appreciated or understood
Mhm.
by most of the world.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most important journeys you'll go through,
Mhm.
as a mother.
Mhm.
And I mean, if you're listening to this,
Mhm.
your mother went through it,
Mhm.
whether you're a mother or not.
Yeah.
Um, we've birthed the planet.
Yes. Yes.
It's an
Yes.
important conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's Callie Wesson from BC Women's who always says, 51% of the population are women and many of them become mothers. And then the other half of the population was birthed by a mother, so like
Yeah.
it affects all of us in some
Yes.
way. And so, yeah, embedding it into our system so that those going through medical school training, midwifery training, nursing programs, any allied health profession, that the future generations of those practitioners, that they're actually educated on matrescence.
Mhm.
And then it's catching up those practitioners who are already out there. Like this term exists and this is what it is. And this is how you can use it with patients and clients. We've got lots of work to do, but that's really part of my mission in this year and coming years and I'm in the works of establishing a not-for-profit that's called the Matrescence Movement.
Mm,
And it's really aiming to do of
amazing.
educating healthcare practitioners and educational systems and practitioners themselves on this concept.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work, still to be done around this, and I think all it takes is a willingness to recognize,
Mm,
this immense journey that mothers go through,
mhm,
and the importance of it.
mhm.
Um, if we were 10 years into the future,
Yes.
what do you hope is different around this conversation?
10 years. Okay, what's realistic within 10 years? Lots is happening in 10 years, right? With the way that technology is moving. I hope, I don't, is this realistic?
Sky's the limit. Go for it.
I hope it's embedded in every significant training program in Canada or related to medical professionals. I would hope that in a conversation that I'm not the only one driving the concept matrescence. That's what I would hope in 10 years. Like I am in conversations with mothers and they bring matrescence forward to me because right now I talk about it every single day. Wherever I go, I'm talking about matrescence. So I would hope that even in 10 years feels short, but my hope, if sky's the limit, is that let's accelerate it. Let's have it so that the term matrescence is just as widely used as adolescence, even in 10 years' time.
Mhm.
They're like, oh yeah, matrescence. I think of that as 30, 40 years away by
Yeah.
the time my children are potentially in childbearing years when they're considering that phase of their life. But let's make it 10 years. Let's
Yeah.
accelerate that.
I think it can I think it can happen. And I think that I'm seeing the pendulum swings both ways just as much as we can see south of the border a shift in taking away
Mm,
rights from women or
mhm.
minimizing the experience of mothers. I think there's also a shift going the other way where it's like,
Yes.
no, let's talk about this, let's
Yes.
validate it, let's give it a name.
Yeah.
Because I think women, mothers in general, need more encouragement, support, and understanding in our
Definitely.
world.
Definitely. And understanding can come like a through line or like a not a magic bullet, but part of understanding comes from having language. And so giving terminology like matrescence, like some of the terms we've covered today, maternal gatekeeping, or other pieces, that we haven't necessarily talked about. Language validates and affirms and normalizes.
Mhm.
And we need that. Mothers deserve that.
100%.
Mhm.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you today that you wanna
Mm,
bring up that maybe I've
mm,
missed?
mm. I suppose the only thing I would add is that there are, there are so many areas that motherhood shifts, and one that we haven't talked about today yet is the ecological domain.
Mm,
How becoming a mother for many shifts their relationship with the environment.
yeah, definitely. I actually dressed up as Mother Nature
Oh.
for Halloween last year, so I'm feeling it. Um, a deep connection for me, at
Yeah,
least, to the to Mother Earth, to our planet,
absolutely.
to the environment. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely.
Mm.
And how that manifests can look different, like once again, for every mother. But I think for many, going into your matrescence and becoming a mother has us revisit that relationship, has us think about it more deeply. We can't not think about it because particularly if you are giving birth, if you are literally birthing a child onto this planet, we can't help but think about the legacy that's ahead of them, what they're inheriting, this natural world. You talked before about like pregnancy and how it's a natural phenomenon that unfolds within us.
Mhm,
That is a deep connection to the natural world.
mhm.
And so for many, there's a revisiting, a contemplation, like, yeah, what is my relationship with the earth? What is it? How do I want to contribute? How do I want to elevate? There's a lot of anxiety around that. There's an area of study that's being looked at that called maternal eco distress
Mm,
and looking at, yeah, some people call it climate anxiety in the general population, but really looking at like mothers as they're feeling that anxiety because it's right in front of them watching the next generation grow up.
yeah, and that disconnect from nature, from Mother
Hmm.
Earth, and that lack of respect for all that Mother Nature
Mhm,
provides, just in the
mhm,
same way that a mother
mhm,
does,
mhm,
that can often go unnoticed.
completely. So as we talk about this, it brings me to a question you asked me before on what's my hope for matrescence, and it's just had me think of something that my hope is that matrescence isn't just commoditized. And what I mean by that is that we actually see it as a public health initiative, as mothers deserving of language, of us deserving like an up leveling, to use your word before, of our education systems, of how we understand this massive transformation that people go through, rather than just selling products to support mothers through motherhood.
Thank you. Thank you so much for saying that
Hmm.
because I think, especially in the wellness industry, there's this focus to monetize it.
Hmm.
Um, and it always makes me feel a bit icky.
Yeah.
So thank you because
Hmm.
this is it's a natural phenomenon. We all go through it. It's not something that you need to buy off a shelf to
Yeah.
help you with.
And it's not the only way, and I don't want mothers to feel or be put in that position.
Yeah. I think, this conversation has been so beautiful and validating
Mhm.
for so many different reasons. Like you said, giving the language to the physical, psychological, the brain development,
Mhm.
the societal changes that you go through. And I just want everyone listening to know, especially the mothers or soon to be mothers,
Mm.
that it's expected and it's
Mhm.
natural and
Mhm.
it's part of it.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Common themes that surface for people, particularly on the psychological side. We didn't talk about that today, but that might be a further
And then
conversation.
what is that?
They would be um, something called maternal ambivalence, and that is the the coexistence of mixed emotions at the same time.
Mm.
So feeling both. I'll give a real example from my own early postpartum days where I just felt like I wanted to be with my son all the time. I just wanted to hold him and have him close to me and in a carrier and sleep next to him. And at the same time, I felt suffocated. And maternal ambivalence is the allowance like of the coexistence of mixed emotions and mixed feelings at once.
Mm.
And it's very for mothers to feel that way all throughout their journey of matrescence, to be experiencing ambivalence. There can be joy and grief. You think about after miscarriage, it can be elation and joy in being pregnant, but also high anxiety for what the pregnancy is going to hold.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, for me, it was really difficult to let go of that
Yeah.
anxiety at first when I first got pregnant
Hmm.
because my mind just kept going to the what
Same.
if? What if?
Yeah.
Is this,
Same.
and every time I would go to the bathroom, I was just
Yes.
afraid.
Yeah. Me too.
Um,
So yeah, maternal ambivalence is one of them. The like identity disruption, meaning like who am I now? Who's this me? Who am I now that I inherited the role of mother? How do I see the world? How do I fit in? Loss of time, meaning no longer being in control of our time,
mm,
right? That now we're caring for another being and it's by nature a relational role, mother, that it's no longer it's like, yeah, I'll meet you tomorrow at 4, right? Or even in the early days, you're like, I have no time.
yeah,
I can't even brush my teeth in the day.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I totally relate. I think all mothers can relate to that, right?
Hmm.
Like how it's a different way of operating.
Yeah.
You suddenly have this new operating system and no one
Hmm.
told you
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
changes.
Totally. Totally. And another theme being yeah, establishing healthy interdependence, meaning again, in a relational role, how do we create clear boundaries so that the relationship between us and child is yeah, is healthy, still allows us space to feel like us, to get what I need in my life and not just entirely, you know, suffocating in
Hmm.
a way. So really establishing the boundaries of like healthy interdependence.
Yeah, yeah, and taking that time for self-care.
Mhm.
That part is so important. It took me a long time.
Mhm.
I'm still working on it,
Mhm.
but not feeling guilty about
Mhm.
taking time for
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, guilt and shame, also such
Yes,
pervasive
yes.
emotions and themes
Oh,
for
man,
many
we didn't
mothers.
even go over mom guilt.
Yes, I know it's almost synonymous with motherhood. It's like maternal guilt is what mothers are taught motherhood is,
Yeah,
feeling
and
guilty.
yeah, what was I gonna say? Uh, an interesting part about guilt is that it came up for me when I got pregnant with my daughter
Mm,
because my son was only 7.5 months old, and I just had so much guilt
mm,
that I didn't get enough time with him,
right.
and that I wasn't and I felt guilty because I wasn't ready.
Yeah,
I wasn't ready to have another child.
yeah,
I felt like I had just given birth.
yeah.
It was, uh it was a tough few months
Yeah.
for me. And that was, I'm not sure the term that you use, but when you can have both
Oh,
feelings
yeah,
at the same
ambivalence, maternal
maternal
ambivalence.
ambivalence, like
Yes,
excitement, but also like
yes,
dread and so
yes,
much grief at the same
yes,
time.
yes, yes. I think it even in the final weeks of my pregnancy with my second, feeling that too. Like I felt a lot of sadness for the ending of the time with just my son.
Mm,
And I also felt so excited for her arrival. Like I had gone through a big fertility journey to have her and IVF and like really wanted her. And both were present at the same time.
yeah.
Like looking forward to and also a grief for this season no longer being the way that it would be. Hmm.
Women are amazing.
They are amazing.
Well, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I feel like we might have a part two on this.
There's so much to be said.
There
There's
is a
so
lot, but I feel like we've had a good introduction
yeah.
into what matrescence is. I'm sure we've probably missed a couple of things here or there, but thank you so much for your time, for your presence in this conversation. It's deeply appreciated.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.